Hello, everybody, and welcome to our another webinar hosted by Vermont NEA, this time featuring Sharon Davison of Allenbrook School, looking at remote teaching and learning in the K-2 classroom. Before we begin, I want to send you all a hug and an appreciation for the tremendous work that you are doing to make sure that our kids are safe in learning. I know in my discussions with teachers in the field that you guys are putting in a ton of hours. You're concerned about your students. We are in a medical emergency, and we can't expect things to be normal, right? And we're looking at sort of emergency learning and creating routines for students where they feel safe. And like I said, I know you guys are putting in a lot of work because we're trying to create it while we're running it. And I appreciate that. So thank you from Vermont NEA. So we are re-recording this webinar because of the fact that one of our presenters' connectivity fell off halfway through, because that's what happens when not everybody has strong connections. So we have the questions from the chat of the original webinar, and we'll be going through those questions as Sharon goes through her slides. We did not save the poll, but just to summarize, we had people from all counties in Vermont. Most people were teachers of pre-K through grade 2, and about 75% of the people in this webinar had kids that had reliable internet. So again, I'm Julie Longchamp, and I'm the Director of Professional Programs at Vermont NEA, and I'm here with Sharon Davison, who is a National Board Certified Teacher from the Allenbrook School in Williston. Welcome, Sharon.
Hey, thank you so much, Julie, for the warm welcome. I'm really, really excited to be here. Thank you so much.
And you get to do it again.
Yeah, I get to do it again. It's all good. I love to talk about online learning. It's all good.
Okay, so our agenda, we're going to be looking at relationships, learning from home, engagement and inquiry, collaborating. Sharon's going to share examples from her team at Allenbrook, and then looking at some of the applications she uses routinely with students and how she communicates with her families. And we also have a Google folder with some resources that you may use and copy and tweak for your own classroom use. And we'll start with relationships.
Awesome. So as we all know, as teachers, we work tirelessly at the beginning of the year in creating a community that's fun, a community that's safe and secure, a community where all of our learners feel that they are part of the learning that's happening throughout the day. And I cannot say this enough. I think that relationships, especially now, are really, really vital. So all of the bridges that you're going to be building, all of the pathways you're going to be connecting for your students now while you're learning and creating this culture online, depend on those relationships that you've already established with your students and your families. I think for me, one of the things that I've been doing a lot is trying to establish some kind of a routine, something that's familiar with the children. And that's really important when you think about it moving forward. So when we think about learning in general, when I think about learning, there's two big ideas. My one idea is starting out with whatever the content, whatever the idea is that I want to explore. And then the other big idea is the space where this learning is going to happen. What is going to be inside walls and what is going to be outside of the walls. So these two ideas are really simple and yet really important when you're thinking about planning your learning for online with your students. So in the beginning, it's really important just to keep things really, really simple. You want to keep things simple for your students. You want to You want to build in activities and things that they're familiar with, but they will also be engaged with. You want to make sure that you have a plan that is really flexible, where you can reflect and make revisions as needed. And then within that plan, how are you collaborating? How are you helping children connect with the things that you are going to be exploring? And then the other piece of that is also setting up those routines right in the beginning. It's really, really important. And have a clear structure to it. Make sure too, when I think about the collaboration that happens so organically and authentically within a classroom setting, now you have to be more purposeful about it because you're outside of your classroom walls. So be thinking about what are some tools, some online tools or other things that might help you with that. So your students have an opportunity to see each other and to be able to connect with other children's ideas. And then this whole idea of reflection is really, really important. I think about this in terms of allowing yourself to change things every time, every day. This has happened a lot with me too. And just as I begin this online routine that I'm establishing with my students, the other day I had a morning message up and it wasn't the right morning message. So here I am with a parent online and I'm sharing my screen in Google Meet and I'm like, oh my gosh, your message is not there. And the parent was great. She's like, Sharon, I think I sent it to you in the message in Seesaw. So everybody's there, we problem solve it together. And sure enough, I found the message and then we were able to connect with that. So that's what I'm saying. It's really okay to make mistakes and to just kind of show that we're all in this together.
I really think our parents know, they've been very understanding, and because we are trying to create this as we go. Even though you've used a lot of technology in your classroom, being remotely all the time, requires you to be flexible and kind of figure things out. Sharon, what percentage of your students are connected?
So this year in my classroom, I have everybody is connected. I have 17 students, and of the 17 students, all of them have at least one or two devices at their homes, and they do have internet capability, and that has been really awesome. I think the other thing with that as well, though, is that a lot of the platforms that I'm sharing today in this webinar, these are all platforms that my students and their families have had experiences working with since the first day of kindergarten. So this is not all of a sudden brand new to them. I think what is brand new and what is still presenting a challenge is that parents are now interacting with these platforms a lot, plus being expected to continue with their full-time job at home too. So it's a really big ask here that I feel like we've kind of put, on families. So that's why when you're in the beginning of these stages and you're thinking about remote learning, is the simpler it is, the better.
Absolutely. So when we think about Sharon's experience, for some of you watching this webinar, we know that you don't have 100% of your students connected. So your lens might be, what piece can I utilize? Can I out? And we'll try to, give you some, offline options. Also, as we think about next year and how a lot of you are going to be utilizing some tools that you haven't used, what are some ways that you can start using it next year? We may be, we may have another, a second wave next year that we may need to be home for a little while. We don't know, but that certainly is one of the possibilities, especially since we're doing such a great job at staying home and keeping safe.
So in the beginning, as I said, starting out, you want to think about having things really simple. So for one of our first lessons that I created in my online environment with my students was during our Google Meet, I created a nature bag. And it was really simple. On the outside of the nature bag, I had some markers at home. So I went through and I drew shapes and I wrote words like curvy line, straight line, something that's green, something that's blue. And it was just a regular paper bag. And so I shared this with the kids and I said, I'm doing this through inquiry now. So every day on my class blog, I have a challenge, an inquiry challenge. And so the challenge of the day was to create a nature bag with materials that you have at home, and then to go outside and see if you can find some of the things that Mrs. D listed on her nature bag. And so just from having that inquiry challenge presented in a way that's really open-ended, I'm inviting students, they don't have to have a brown bag. Some kids use plastic bags, some kids used like a gift bag, whatever it is that you have at home. And it was naturally engaging because it was so open-ended. Kids were going out and finding the things that I had listed. But when we had shared the next day, I found out that a lot of children had found other things that I had not thought of. And so they were going outside with older siblings and younger siblings. And this is really important too, right? When we're thinking about these inquiry challenges and we're asking parents to do this additional kind of thinking with their kids, is that are these activities something that they could include their siblings in with as well? So I'm also thinking about things like that.
Really good point.
And then this whole idea of keeping it simple. It's really, I cannot say this enough, it's really important to build on what is familiar. What have you created already in your classroom? And how are your students and your families connecting now? So if you used email, that's awesome. Then you want to continue to use that because your families are used to that communication in that form. If you use Twitter or Padlet or Seesaw or Blogger or any of those platforms, those are platforms then that you want to continue to use. And the reason you want to do that is because your families are already comfortable interacting with those platforms. They understand how they work and they know what kinds of information is found there. That's really important. So for me, I use a lot of different platforms, and I'm not suggesting here today that I'm advocating for everybody to use 5 different platforms. But what I am advocating for is for you just to think about what is it like one platform that you could use, that you could begin to build that student connection and culture that you're so used to having in a face-to-face environment in a remote environment.
So Sharon, is it time for me to press your B?
Oh, sure. You could press on, B for Blogger.
Would you say that Blogger is your primary? I know you email students to parents. Blogger is your primary?
So what I do is, this is my blog, and this is actually great, Julie, because I can show them Padlet too. So if you look here, I do use Blogger. I've used Blogger for years, and I love it. The reason I love it is because it's free, and it's also very, very simple to use. And so what I do in kindergarten is I have 1 blog post a day. And in the past, I've always said day 1 of kindergarten, day 2 of kindergarten. And what I do is I have a description, a brief, really brief description of what we've done during the day. And then I have information there along with usually Google Photos. But see, now that we're not at home, now that we're at home, the blog is going to be really important for parents because they're already used to looking there. So as you can see here on this post, this is Learning from Home, day 18. So as you can see, I always have a challenge of the day. I usually share student work. I usually include some kind of an activity sheet or something that I've created, something that I will be asking the children to do. And then Julie, if you scroll a little bit down on the bottom, on the left underneath, keep going a little bit further, underneath this, right there, stop right there, where it says explore online links for learning. This is really important because I've already established every day parents are used to getting a photo gallery of Google Photos of the day, which can be anywhere from 20 to 50 photos of what we've been doing in kindergarten. I wanted to continue that so they, even though we're not getting pictures alongside each other, we're still able to share pictures of our learning together. So that's another way to kind of invite that collaboration to happen. So when parents click on April or March, they'll be able to go in there and see a whole collection of photos that I've created that have been shared with me during our month of online learning. And parents also have the capability to go in there and add pictures themselves. The other thing that I really like about the blog is like one-stop shopping for a lot of things. I have important announcements there and other important links that are there as well. You want to make sure to look at those links individually because they have some great opportunities for children as well. And then if you go up to the top again, you'll see at the very top where there was like a giant sticky note of all these pictures up on the top. So this right there where it says learning outside of kindergarten. So I created this on our first day, our first couple of days that we were starting to connect remotely. This is called Padlet and it's free if you go to padlet.com. And you are allowed, I think you can make like 6 Padlets for free. And then after that, you have to pay for it. So I really love Padlet because it's easy. It's like a sticky note. You can make it public. You can also set it up so that parents and kids can actually contribute photos, videos, words. They can draw on this, anything at all that they want to. It's so easy to do. And you can also embed it in a blog or you can send it as a link. So this was again, it's that idea, right, of keeping it simple. This was really open-ended. This is all about what are you doing at home? And so what's been happening is the kids have been posting pictures of things from our daily challenges. They've been posting, one of our experiments we did was hug a tree. You know, you have to go out and hug a tree and measure the circumference. And people were really excited about that, again, because it wasn't just the student that was able to do that, but if they had other siblings in the house, they could also join in on the fun. And that was really, really awesome.
Sharon,
So
I'm sorry,
no,
did your parents put these on the Padlet themselves or did they send you the pictures or was it a combination?
Both. Yeah, it's a combination, but it's really easy you'll see in the lower right-hand corner a little add pink sign. If you click on that, double click on it, a little note will come up, you see in the top left, and you can give it a title, write something, and then you can upload a picture, a link, you can take a picture, you can draw something, all of that. And all of those, you have to make sure, mine are public. And again, because my parents are used to using a variety of online tools, I did get permission from them even before kindergarten even started. So,
and there are no last names on here.
No. And you have to be careful of that too, right? Because I always feel like I'm reminding parents to remember not to put your child's name with their real picture. And some parents forget and then they do it. And I feel like, okay, that's on them. But one of my students the other day during one of our meets said, yeah, remember, we can't have our real name with our photos. So sometimes, you know, parents forget too. But again, that's really, really important. We want to make sure that people are not able to identify a 5- and 6-year-old by their name.
Do they have their, quote, screen names?
No, we don't have screen names. We just have no names, just faces.
Well, what a wonderful way to connect your kids when they're apart. They can still see pictures. Do you keep record of like who is posting so you can see who's not?
I do. I do have, yeah, I do. I have Google Forms that I've created and documents so that when I go in, like using Seesaw, for example, which is a great online platform, that houses a lot of things for parents, and children can also access activities in Seesaw. So I can really differentiate my instruction. So if there's a child that is still working on their teen numbers, I can assign that child those activities that they need to practice those skills.
Yeah.
And then they can just do it. And then I have that opportunity to look at their work, to like it, and then to either type a comment or record my voice and leave a comment and be reflective about what it is that I'm noticing. And that's a really great feature of Seesaw too.
And for those of you that are using Google Classroom, Padlet can also connect to your Google Classroom. Well, that's great.
So the other idea that I think about too when I'm creating my plan is this idea of engagement. And just really simply think about what is your interest also as an educator? What do you think your children are most interested in? Is it inquiry, math, literacy, arts, or other? I chose inquiry because I do a lot of scientific and geographical work in kindergarten. As a National Geographic certified educator, I've been doing a lot of work around the natural world and also finding ways to attach and weave the global goals and service learning into our work. And so those are things that my children are already used to using and exploring with their families. So I stick with inquiry. So again, just think about what lens you would like to use when it comes to engaging your kids. Maybe it's a math problem of the day. I don't know.
Yeah.
So on the next couple of slides, I'll just quickly show you these. These are inquiry challenges. So on day 4, we were looking at print in nature. And I was also talking to the kids a lot about environmental print. So while I was walking with Mr. Davison outside, we noticed trees and other things in nature that made letters. And then I also took a picture of some signs saying this was kind of what we call environmental print. But if I look at it, I could actually find letters and sight words that we have been working on. And so this was really exciting and motivating for a lot of the kids. And then they all went outside and tried to find sight words and signs and letters in nature. It was wonderful. And then the next one, this was because I am also Teach the SDGs ambassador with the global goals. My students also view themselves as global goal ambassadors. And so as stewards for the world, they're very used to this language around how you're an explorer, what a cartographer is, and what a scientist is. So again, this is not new language or new vocabulary for my children, but I'm building on those experiences that we've already had. And so again, I'm always thinking about how am I going to engage them and get them outside. And this was a really great activity too, because then it kind of lent itself into map making. And we had opportunities to have conversations about perspective and what that looks like when you're at one end of the driveway versus the other end. So that was really kind of fun.
And how did they share their maps with you?
So they made maps. A lot of them did on paper or reused cardboard at home. And families took pictures of them and sent and uploaded them on Seesaw. And then we used Google Meet, where we meet together every morning for a half an hour. And then children have an opportunity to share their work during that time as well. And then here, this is another way to kind of help with that collaboration a little bit, is using Padlet, because this way children are sharing everything that they're doing. We usually look at this at the beginning of each Google Meet, and the kids get very inspired by each other's ideas.
Sharon, is your Padlet, is it one Padlet for the whole year and it just gets longer and longer?
I change it up every theme usually, and sometimes I reuse Padlet. So when we were exploring like Zero Hunger, I still use that same Padlet from a few years ago, and then the kids just add more information to it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so you can reuse them too. They're pretty handy. And then this whole idea of collaboration, is really important. And think about like your team, people in your school, your families, your community, and how you're all connecting together. And what are those other relationships that you have at a more global place as well, and how you can continue those partnerships, because through those partnerships, you want to be able to support each other during this time.
So we have a question about Seesaw. As a couple questions. Is Seesaw something you've used all year, or is that something that you started as a result of this crisis?
I've been using Seesaw all year. And actually, prior to Seesaw, I used to use KidBlog. I was a big supporter of KidBlog. I used KidBlogger for many, many years in kindergarten. And then I discovered Seesaw, and I've just been using Seesaw. I'm not sure for how many years, but for a while now. And we started using it the first day of kindergarten. That's how easy it is to use. So children and parents are really used to this platform.
And you actually had a training for your parents, if I remember.
Yes, yeah. What I do every year is the week before school starts, I invite former parents and former students to come and present with me to my new group of parents and students. And we go through some of the platforms and the tools that we'll be using in kindergarten and talk about how we're going to be using that to enhance our learning and enrich our learning. And that is really powerful too. I always feel every year parents are so grateful to hear from former parents and former students about, their experiences. So this menu, this is something that my kindergarten team worked on, collaborated together on. I have an amazing team of teachers. There are 7 of us, and then we have amazing para-educators as well and teaching assistants. And the teachers, we all met and came up with this menu. And so this is a great example. I feel like if you don't have technology, if you just want to print something like this off and mail it to your families, the whole idea behind this was we wanted to give a menu of options. So different ideas, like what are some social emotional things you should be thinking about? What are some math things? What are some science and social studies activities? What are some literacy activities? What are some things that the essential arts teachers also could have in here? So you can see from this list, they're very open-ended, very simple, very kindergarten, very appropriate for kindergarten. And then we together also as our team, we collaborated online and came up with a menu of options, which is additional activities that we will upload, and we will change this menu as needed.
So this is sort of the structure. When I think about your day in this remote learning, you start every day with a half an hour Google Meet with your kids where you talk about the inquiry challenge of the day and then review what you did yesterday.
Yep, what we did yesterday. And then I have a student that writes the morning message, and they get it to me the night before. And I just put it in Google Docs. And then that student with their parent reads the morning message. And then as the kids are reading the message, one of the things that we've always done in kindergarten is like, look for sight words, look for numbers, look for, digraphs, look for certain letter sounds, things like that. So what I have the child do along with me is I would say something like, when they're done reading the message, okay, hey, George, what do you want children to find in the message? And he may say, okay, I want everyone to find the word go. And then I invite everyone to use their finger and touch the screen wherever they see the word go, say the word to someone next to them. And then what I'm doing with my mouse is I'm using my mouse on the screen to help guide for some children who may not be able to see it.
Great. And do you record those meetings?
I don't record those meetings. And the reason I don't record them is because of privacy issues for home. And I feel like if I were going to record that, I would have to have everyone's permission. And I don't know that everyone would agree to that. And then that would impact the number of people that participate every morning. And I've had really great participation. I've had 17 out of 17 children a few times. I think the lowest number that I've had is 15 out of 17, and that was just once. Otherwise, normally I have 16 out of 17 that come every morning.
So you don't need to send any materials home for your students?
I don't.
They're all on Seesaw?
They're all on Seesaw, and things that I create in a Google Doc, I also download as a PDF, and I send those additional activities that I create on my blog, like additional activity sheets, things like that. And so parents who have printers at home, they have that option of printing that worksheet if they want to. For people who don't have printers at home, they can just recreate that worksheet on a piece of cardboard or a paper bag or paper or whatever they have at home.
Great. And this template is in the folder, and you can copy it and create your own menu if that's a structure that might work for your students.
And this was something funny too, right? My team, I work on the Explore team. There's 3 of us, 3 teachers and a special educator. And so we are using Padlet also on our team. So every couple of weeks, we're posting a different challenge. So this challenge is to make a silly face. So again, this is not, a Padlet is so great, right? It's such an easy tool to use. And this way, then you can invite participation and collaboration, and people can share whatever they want. And I always tell the children, you know, when we look at these things visually together, how much, you know, our ideas are the same and different, and how our ideas can really challenge our thinking and inspire us to try something new. So it's a great tool.
Great.
And then our morning message, as I shared earlier, I use Google Docs and Google Meet. This is just a couple of examples. Sometimes the parents with their child will write the message, and then the child will sign it. And then other times they will tell me what they want to say, and I will just put it in Google Docs and use a really large font so that everybody can see. And again, this is a really easy thing to do with children. And that way, you know, we're building on something that we've already done. We've always taken turns with the morning message, but now they're being asked to write it. And they love it. They love it. So it's such an easy thing to do. And again, when they're interacting with it, you know, they're touching the screen, or circling the word or the letter or number that you ask them to find, and then they have to say it to someone sitting next to them.
There was a question about the difference between Google Hangout and Google Meet. I think the difference is that Google Hangout has a limit of how many people can be on it. So if you're going to meet with your classroom, you're going to choose Google Meet. And I know a lot of districts in Vermont are using Google Meet as the kind of a meeting place, virtual meeting place.
Yeah, and it is easy to use. I just learned how to use this a couple weeks ago.
So this was one of your new technologies.
That's right. It was something I just learned. And I like it better actually than Google Hangout.
Great.
And then here is just another message that another child had written. And again, over on the left, you see another illustration. That was one of our challenges, was to go outside and make a scientific drawing of things that you're seeing around you, under your feet, and above your head. So again, there's lots of opportunities to include cross-content areas for all of these inquiry challenges.
Yeah.
And again, staying connected, here is one of my students who was sharing a mathematical idea. She created ice cream cones, and she was using Buzzies, and she was working on one-on-one correspondence. So she made ice cream cones with a certain number of scoops in each cone. And this was great. And so she shared this during one of our morning sessions, and then inspired other kids to do something similar. So it's just really neat to see how that can happen. And then one of the last pieces here too, Julie, is really important, is this idea of making adaptations and adapting things and reflecting on your plan, on your day plan. And if it doesn't make sense, then change it. You know, we've been looking a lot at inquiry. And so one of the things that I found was a rock, and I found some trash, and I shared it with the kids. And I'm like, what doesn't make sense here? You know, what can we do about it? What is an action or something that we can do? And I offer that to all of you as well. When you're engaged in learning and setting up your plan or whatever these experiences are, if it doesn't make sense, it's okay. You know, just through that revision process, change it.
I do have another comment again to make about Google Meet. People can use a phone to connect to your Google Meet.
Yes, they can.
So if you have, 75% of your kids connected, and you can have the other 25% participate by calling in. I think you just have to be, make sure that everything is described, and because you have some people that are seeing it and some people that are just hearing it. But that's better than nothing, right? That's at least
That's
connecting
right.
everybody in that way.
That's right. And it just hearing each other's voices too. That's
Yeah,
really
and hearing their teacher's voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, Padlet, I just don't have enough nice things to say about it. It's such an easy online tool to use, and it really helps build those relationships. Here, you know, when students share their work, I had one family who's been watching the Cincinnati Zoo every day, because every day they have a new animal that they introduce to the kids. And so they're doing all these awesome art projects, and other kids are like, oh, I want to do that. And I want to learn about the porcupine. So it's just such a nice way just to kind of get a quick glimpse at what other people are doing. And again, it's visual. I try to think about these platforms in ways that what can they offer in terms of the visualization? Because for young children, they are very visual and very hands-on and very kinesthetic. Having a lot of text and things like that is not always very helpful or useful. They really need to kind of visualize or see what it is. That helps them understand it a bit more. So then the Seesaw features are really awesome too. What I really like about it is there's a place for you to make announcements. You can upload videos or photos. You can also do messages as well. You can message just your students if you want. I don't use that feature. I just use the messaging system for families. So they get, every day they get an announcement from me. Here's the link to the blog, and this is what's coming up. And then I can also upload activities here as well. And if I want to just have a conversation with a parent, I can do that privately through the messaging system in Seesaw. And then on the left, you'll notice for people who do want, if you do want your families to access the activities, they need to download the class app and the family app both. Just, that was something I learned recently.
Great. And I think we're going to do a webinar on using Seesaw.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it's a wonderful platform. And then here are just some activities. One child here is keeping her own weather journal every day about what the weather is like, and her family shares that with me. And then on the other side, in one of the Seesaw activities was to go outside and actually record or take a picture of the sounds that you hear. So this child had done a little video, and then when he was done, you can also then go in and he uses his invented writing to actually label some of the sounds that he heard.
That's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. The kids love it. And then here are just a couple more examples too. So like individual, if you have children that, I do have a few literacy kiddos that we're still working on letter ID and letter fluency. And so there are some activities in Seesaw, so I can keep assigning those activities. And so parents have been really awesome about doing those activities, you know, every day with their child to help build their success. And then on the right, this was kind of a shape hunt. You can either create your own activity, or they're also in Seesaw where they're very open-ended, and the kids had to go in and they had to find different shapes and use their inventive writing to write about them. And I love this one. I just love this one. Trapezoid, rectangle. I mean, it's just wonderful what they've done.
I like the rectangular prism.
Oh yeah, isn't that awesome? I know.
Great vocabulary.
That's right. And then the other thing is feedback, right? So we're always thinking about, especially as a teacher of a kindergarten, first or second grade teacher, we're always giving feedback, and our kids are always talking, and that's wonderful. So some things that you want to think about when you're giving that feedback is how are your students going to be able to hear your voice, and how are you going to be able to have these conversations with your children remotely? So one of the really awesome things in Seesaw that I just love is you can actually record your voice. So when kids are finished with an activity, I can either type a message or I can tell them using the recorder, and then they can respond back to me, and then I can respond back to them. And this has been really awesome. I just discovered this year. I actually had a couple of families who figured this out ahead of time. And I was so grateful. I was like, okay, so now we're going to do that. And I think it's also nice for young children to hear their teacher's voice, because then they become, oh, that's Mrs. D, or "Oh, that's Miss Longchamp," and listen to what they said. And I want to say something back to them. So it's a great way to have conversations as well.
That is fabulous.
And then again, I think just it's really important to think about, your reflection. I am a big planner, as I've said. And for me, I'm really learning, this remote learning is really helping me take a breath. I cannot tell you this enough. Just to take a breath and step back and say, okay, what is that big idea? What is that aha moment that I'm having or that I want my kids to have? And how am I offering that in a way that I'm inviting engagement? Not prescribing it, but inviting it. And I think that has really, really helped me a lot. This was one of the activities that I did. My husband took a video of me giving a weather report. And so I thought this would be really cool for the kids to do. So this is one of my students giving the weather report.
Yeah. We have 5 inches of snow. And it's pretty sticky, so we can build a snowman and with 5 inches. Back to you, Mrs. D.
So I just love this. I just absolutely love this. I just laugh all the time. It's so adorable. And I had almost everybody in my class submitted a video to me giving
I
the
love
weather.
it. Back to you, Mrs. D.
That's right. Back to you, Mrs. D.
You are still their teacher.
That's right. So then this whole idea of communication, family communication, how are you going to be communicating in this new online culture that you're creating? What are you communicating and why are you communicating that? So for me, I think it's really, really important. Always be positive and be patient. As educators, this time right now is crucial for families. Some families are losing jobs. They have to work at home, and now they're being thrown into this professional hat of being a teacher where they've had no training. They have no idea what that's like. So it's really important that as their teacher, as I do this for my kids and their families, is to model perseverance and to model resiliency. It's really important to think about that. No question is too silly. Sometimes people need to ask the same question 5 times, and that's okay.
Great. So true.
And then this is just a couple of slides about Google Meet, saying hello, modeling, again, what you want to see, being able to practice, set up a routine within your Google Meet. You want to make sure people are invited. It's not like a have to. And then even in your Google Meet, this has happened to me. I've had to make adaptations like in the middle of something. And just, that's what I'm saying, just to like take a breath and just be okay with that. What's most important is that you see your kids and they see you and they get to talk to you. And they know that you're still there saying things like, I believe in you. We can do this. It's great to see you. And help develop and continue those relationships. And this is just my team. This was an example of a Google Meet that my kindergarten team, they're pretty awesome. Look at all of them. They're smiling for the camera. But we meet online every week. And so this is just kind of what Google Meet looks like. So if you want to see this grid view, you get what is called Chrome extension. And if you get Chrome extension, then in the top right-hand corner, you can see like a little grid. Then you can actually have a grid view of people on your screen.
Great. Is that what you do when you meet with your students? Do you use a grid view, or does it depend if you're sharing or not?
No, I use a grid view so I can see everybody. But when I do share my screen, I do not share a grid view because depending on the devices that people have, so if people just have a small phone and you do a grid view, everybody's going to look the size of your thumbnail, right? Or an iPad. So you just want to be aware of that.
Great. Interesting, kind of with, you're part of a really strong team. Have you guys had the discussion about if one of you gets sick?
No, we haven't.
So
We
that
have
is
not
something.
had that discussion.
Yeah, that is something that's part of the continuous learning plan that the agency, that's one of the questions, is that we have, it's not like you can get a substitute, right? I
No.
think we are going to have to rely on our teammates,
A lot.
if one of us gets sick. So, this is the time to be part of a good team if you're lucky enough to, have that organization in your schools.
And then these are resources that I've listed for everyone to check out. They're all really very impactful resources. I put my blog on there, a folder of some things that I've shared with families, some things I've created. Julie's created an example of a template lesson plan, like for the last 8 weeks of school. Our plan. There's also been a great thing that just came out by Common Sense Media with some great resources. So that is there. And then at the bottom, there are some online learning inquiry ideas on online National Geographic. And that is a wonderful, wonderful resource. You want to be sure to check that out.
The Agency of Education, I was on the phone with them today. They are partnering with PBS, Vermont Public Television.
Oh, that's great.
And they are creating, lesson plans and things like that that can support different grade levels. So that is going to be another resource. And they're really looking at, things that don't need technology.
Mm-hmm.
And most people do have televisions at home, and most people do get PBS as a station. So they are working with the cable television and Dish, and just to make sure that that they include, at least through the end of the year, those stations. So it's Vermont Public Television and then the Plus. So check for that in your at VTNEA newsletter or online or at the Agency of Education. Just search for PBS and you'll get their page. But that's just coming out today. And today the PBS will have the shows that will be recorded or transmitted next week, so you could do a little pre-planning. So Sharon, let me just go through all of our other questions that were asked when we did this original webinar. But for all of you, Vermont NEA has a special COVID-19 info. Please visit it. We have different things every day. I know that there's a lot of stuff coming at you, but we try to keep this updated. And then if you have a specific concern, you can always talk to your association, your local association leaders, or your UNICEF director. And then a couple. Let me actually go back to the questions. So Sharon, you don't have any, this parents are the ones that put stuff up on Padlet.
Yes, they can. And if people are having trouble or they don't have a smartphone, they can send photos to me and I will put them up.
Great.
And I think, it's just really important, everyone, just to take care of yourself too, right? We want to make sure that we're ready, we're doing everything that we need to care for ourselves too in this time, because families are really depending on us and our students are depending on us. And I just, again, want to say thank you to all of you. I think teachers are probably, the most amazing profession that I know of. And we all care so deeply about our students and our families, and we want to open the world to them. We want them to be successful and feel safe and secure and to have food. All of those things are so important. So moving forward, just remember, keep it simple. Find 1 or 2 things that you'd like to try, and then leverage as much engagement, reflection, and connectivity as you can with what works well for you, your school, and your families.
And then I wanted to show you the folder that you all have access to. It's this folder right here. Examples from Sharon in the field. So she has her weekly themes, an example schedule. I think that's the one that the menu, maybe? No. This is a possible schedule for you as you keep your regular time. But Sharon, it seems like, you're a half an hour a day with students, and then you have an hour of office time afterwards to connect with parents and students.
Yes. Yes. And I did that pretty intentionally because, again, when you're thinking of, taking care of myself as well, I think for a lot of families that I've heard from, the morning time really works best. And so what I'd like to do is, parents have really commented on what a great way it is to start their day like that. So we have our meeting, and then I remain online with the same Google link Hangout.
Mm-hmm.
And that way people can just stop in and out as they like.
That's
So,
great.
and then I can just sit and work for an hour because that's just what I'm doing. And then people can come in and say, hey, Sharon, or hey, Mrs. D, I'm having a question about Lexia. Can you help me? Or whatever it is. And that seems to be working out well.
Do you have kids that come in and say, hi, Miss D?
We're starting this. Well, this week I have with check-ins, and next week we'll see, but I'm sure kids will. And I think that's great for kindergarten because, again, it's really important that they see me and that they hear my voice.
Yes. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for sharing your work in these difficult times. And again, Sharon is really lucky. Every student should have access like Sharon's kids do. And we hope that as a result of this, it will generate, the urgency for every student to be connected, because everybody deserves to have this experience. So we hope that you have been able to take bits and pieces that, one or two things that you can do with your students or ideas, and please share them, because I think that we are all learning this together, and the more we communicate with each other and share ideas, the stronger our students' learning will be. So I hope everybody has a nice April vacation, whether you're off next week or the week after. And we have 9 more weeks of the remote learning, and stay healthy, everybody.
Thanks.